You're very welcome to Radio Espial episode 65. As you will have seen, something a little bit different, and it's quite a while since we've done an interview. There is one coming up, and as you can see there from the image, we are back on the case of Esra Uyrun, who disappeared on February the 23rd, 2011. Brian has carried out an interview in recent days with the sister of Esra, Berna Fiden, and the bulk of this episode contains that interview. What's going to happen now is we're going to go to just some snippets of the case. We've done a previous timeline on this, have done an update last year on the 13th anniversary of our going missing. This now the 14th year. The anniversary just passed, as I say, on February 23rd. We're going to go straight to those snippets, and then after that straight into the interview that my colleague Brian carried out with Berna Fiden, Esra's sister. After that, both of us, myself and Brian, are going to come back and we're going to discuss the interview and some talking points that came out of it and see where we are as an update on this case. So let's get straight into that. Again, I want to stress this episode is an interview. If you wish to know more about the case, the timeline, the full timeline we did almost 2 years ago now, previous updates, they'll be in the links. Let's go to those snippets and then straight into the interview that I carried out with Berna.
Speaking with Berna Fiden, the sister of Esra Uyrun, who went missing from where she lived in West Dublin on the 23rd of February 2011.
Yeah.
Have there been any other developments?
No, none at all.
Nothing.
My name's Esra and I'd like to welcome you to
It just doesn't make sense. Has someone got hold of her? Has something horrible happened to her and we just can't find her?
Give me a kiss.
That child was everything to her.
I love you.
So I don't believe that she would have just taken off and left her baby behind.
What you're looking at here, that's an image of the not her, but a Renault Twingo. It's just for library purposes, so you can see the size of car. We're going to talk about this car very shortly and a bit more about the details of it. It's small. It's a two-door car. If, for whatever reason, whatever purpose, whatever intention, you are in the back of that car, you cannot exit that car. You can't even exit that car if the car stopped, because there's no rear doors for the passengers to get out. Why would you open the back hatchback of this small car and just put your purse, or some other person put Esra's purse in the back? Because there's no actual separating wall or structure between the very small back boot and the seats in the rear of the car. Is it possible that the purse was on the seat and slipped back and fell down and somehow ended up in this bay area, this bottom bay area? That's a possibility. There's no separator. There are no separators between the boot and the back of that passenger car. So I suppose the other more unpleasant
thing is, I suppose it's safe to say there's a few ways the purse could have got into the boot.
Yeah.
Hello, folks. So, welcome to Radio Espial. There, we've a guest on today. We've Berna Fiden. Our sister Esra Uyrun is missing since 23rd of February 2011, and Berna is visiting Ireland at the moment. So we're going to talk with Berna now. And thanks to Berna, I know she's had a very hectic and difficult week this week, in particular, for making time to talk to us today. So welcome, Berna, and can you tell us a bit about Esra, please? Esra, please.
I'd like to start off by saying, Esra was born in the UK, and we had a wonderful childhood growing up. Me, mother hen, looking after brother and sister most of the time. But she was a very happy person. She was a very joyful person, and she would make friends with everybody. Even as a child, she had lots of friends, and she would befriend. She'd make new friends all the time. And then obviously over the years, as we've grown up into teenagers, and she studied art and design, and she loved her art. She was very artistic, painting, making clothes, organizing fashion shows. She even did a display. Well, it was an art show in the UK, where she displayed all her paintings and everything, which went wonderfully. She met her husband. They lived in the UK for a good few years, and then he got offered a job in Ireland, so they made the decision to move over to Dublin. They bought their own house. They happily settled in, and Esra fell pregnant to her joy. She always wanted to have a baby, and so to her joy, she had a son, which she doted on, absolutely doted on. And anybody that met Esra would know about her son and how much she loved him, and she'd be showing pictures to everybody as soon as they met. And then as time, sorry, it's just hard to speak.
Take your time.
They spent 4 years in Dublin. As I said, they bought their own house. They were working here, and after my sister had the baby, she did give up work for a while, and then she would travel over to the UK every 6 months. 6 weeks.
Yeah.
She'd travel over every 6 weeks to see the family. Because my father wasn't very well for a very long time. He had a stroke when he was 50. So for 20 years, he was in very bad health. And, Esra would be on the phone to us all the time. If not me, my daughter, my mum, my brother, she would always be on the phone to a member of the family. And her friends over in the UK, she'd keep in touch all the time, as we would with her, obviously. And then my sister, in October 2010, my father passed away. But she managed to get, I phoned her, and she managed to get back home before he passed away. So he acknowledged that she was there. And even before that, as I said, she was over every 6 weeks to make, to spend time with us and the family. And so when she came over, of course, we were upset that we lost our father. Yeah. Anybody would be. But we were also thankful he was no longer suffering, because he'd suffered for a very long time. And we had all prepared ourselves that, he was going to pass because his health had deteriorated. So a lot of people at the beginning, they were all like, when Esra disappeared, they tried to blame it on, oh, she must have committed suicide because your father passed away. But our father's death was not a shock to us. Yes, we were upset, but it was expected, So I don't believe for one moment my sister committed suicide.
The fact they got to see each other.
That out at the beginning,
No, exactly right. And it's the fact they got to see each other as well, I suppose.
Sorry?
there's no consolations either, but the fact they got to see each other before he passed as well
No, of
must
course
have
not.
helped
I
a
mean,
bit, you know.
he acknowledged my sister
Yeah,
when she got to the house, and he did pass away that morning.
yeah,
After she flew over in the evening, and we all spent all night with him,
yeah,
and then early hours of the morning he passed away. But he acknowledged everybody
yeah,
around him, and he died peacefully at home. He
yeah,
didn't want to die in hospital anyway. And Ezra stayed over for the funeral and everything. She went back after the funeral. Um, but even after coming back to Dublin, we was on the phone to her every day to make sure
yeah,
that she was okay and everything was fine. And then my sister-in-law had my nephew on the 29th of December. So
yeah,
she flew back over again on the 29th of December. And everything was, she was okay. We went out together. We went for a meal. She was back to her normal self because, well, I'm saying she's back to her normal self. I mean, although we'd lost dad and we was in a,
yeah,
we were all very sad at the beginning. We'd got used to the idea and we'd put him to rest and we started moving on by the time she came back.
yeah. No, understand.
And so, on her last visit, she said to my mum, look, why don't you just come over and stay with me for a bit? She goes, people are still knocking on the door, talking about dad and upsetting you. No, I want to take you away from all of this and come stay with me for a month or so. And but she said to my mum at the time, I know you don't like to fly on your own, so I'll invite my mother-in-law over as well. You can both travel together, and when you're ready to go back, I'll take you back home. And that was the arrangement.
Yeah,
And Esra booked the flights and everything. And when she returned back to Dublin, her husband still actually had work to do in the UK, so she travelled back on her own
yeah,
because she had some things that she needed to finish off on her own.
yeah,
So when people question the fact, oh, she may have run away or she may have committed suicide, I put my foot down and say, no, I don't believe that, because if she was going to do anything like that, she had 3 or 4 days on her own in Dublin while her husband was still in the UK that she could have done that. But so that's why there's no way I would believe that she just took off or done something to herself. And so anyway, like she came back over here. Her husband obviously travelled back and whatever, and everything was normal. We would
yeah,
talk to her daily as normal. And on the Sunday before she went missing, she called me and said to me, "Oh, please don't forget to put these few bits in Mum's case because I forgot to buy." Because she was talking about herbs and spices that
yeah,
you can't find over here as easily.
yeah.
And so she gave me a list of bits that she wanted me to make sure Mum was going to bring over that week.
So she was
And I
thinking
said,
ahead. She
yeah,
was
that's
planning
fine.
ahead. Like, yeah,
Of course,
yeah,
because I mean, I spoke to her on the Sunday. She went missing on Wednesday,
yeah,
so it's just a few days before she went missing. She was giving me a shopping list of things to make sure to put them in Mum's case, so she didn't forget to travel with them.
yeah,
And then on the Monday, excuse me, on the Monday, she called her friend in the UK to wish her friend's son a happy birthday because he turned 2.
yeah,
And on the Tuesday, her neighbour said she saw her cleaning home, and she'd mentioned to her was the spring cleaning in February. So she'd said to her neighbour, "Oh, mums are coming over on Thursday, so I'm getting
yeah,
house ready,"
yeah,
which is all normal, nothing out of character there.
yeah,
And even when I spoke to her on the Sunday, she said, "Oh, I'm going to surprise the mums because they're going to be here on my birthday." And she goes, "And I'm booking a really lovely spa and a posh restaurant for us to celebrate, and we're going to have a girly day." So I said, "Oh, that would be lovely." I said, "Well,
yeah,
Mum will really enjoy that." And, this is arrangements that, she'd made.
yeah,
And, this doesn't sound like anyone that's going to just run off or do anything to themselves.
yeah,
And then on the Wednesday, we got a call to say that Esra had left that morning to go to the shops and hadn't returned. Now, that was a total and utter shock to us, because we were like, what do you mean she hasn't come back? And her husband said, well, I didn't want to worry anybody at first. He goes, I waited to see, you know, he goes, I kept on calling her number, but no one answered. And he goes, no, you know, then I ended up calling the Gardaí because I was getting worried. And they said to him, well, she's an adult. You have to wait a certain period of time before you know, report her missing. And so I said, no, don't wait. I said, you know, take a photo, go down to the station and let them at least find the car.
Yeah, because she popped out, wasn't it? She popped out for a brief time, and they shared the car. He was going to take the car, wasn't it? And then she was going to pop back.
Yeah, because that morning her husband said, oh, I'm going to take the car for the day before the mums come over, so I can get a gym session in, because you know what my mum's like, you know. You know, she'd want to spend time with me. And so my sister had said to him at the time, like, well, if you're going to take the car for the day, let me just nip to the shops while you get ready for work, keep an eye on the baby, and then when I come back, you take the car and go.
Standard stuff, like all couples.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just normal stuff, and this
isn't
anything out of character, because any time that he wanted, you know, if he had a late meeting, or if he was going to go to the gym or whatever, he was going to take the car. You know, it was a shared car, so it was nothing unusual about that. And but unfortunately, like he said, this was like 20 past. He goes 7:15 in the morning. He goes, it was no later than this. For the sheer fact is, he goes, because I would have needed the car back to get to work for 8 o'clock. And you know, she would have only had to, you know, go down the road to Neilstown, pick up a few bits, and come back. But unfortunately, her car never actually made it there. Her car registration was read at the Power City roundabout just before 8 o'clock. So our question was, why did it take so long to get there? Because that drive is only a 4 to 5 minute drive. It doesn't matter which direction you take to get there. It shouldn't take more than 4 or 5 minutes. And considering the week that she went missing, as it is this week, it was mid-term, there'd be less cars on the road because there's no school run. You know, so it would definitely not take as long as half an hour to get to a roundabout, which is only a 4-minute drive anyway, even if there was traffic.
What happened in the meantime there?
So we've always questioned the fact, did something happen near her home? You know, did she stop? Was she flagged down? Did she stop to help somebody? We just don't know. You know, we've been going around in circles. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody's come forward with anything. Back in 2011, there just wasn't enough CCTVs around. As they are now. I mean, down my sister's road now, if you go down those roads that sort of back into her street and whatever, there's loads of CCTVs. But 2011, there was barely any. So they were relying on CCTVs from shops or, you know, bank ATM machines and things like that.
They get wiped over then regularly and everything, and if you're not in quickly, you're going to lose it. Like,
of course. So unfortunately, we had no I mean, you know, cameras here on the roads. You know, in the UK, the traffic cameras actually view the inside of the car, whereas over here it tends to read number plates. You know, at least if it viewed the inside of the car, we'd be able to see who was actually driving. Was it her that was driving that car?
She didn't even catch number plates on, well, the car we'll get to in a minute there about in Bray, but they didn't even catch some of the number plates on the CCTV here either.
So the CCTV at the Power City roundabout, unfortunately, just reads number plates, and so does all the you know, along the M50 all the way down to Bray. So her car, the time scale between the Power City roundabout and her car entering Bray is the right amount of time, because we've done that journey. You know, I've done that journey backwards and forwards so many times, and we've timed it several times.
Sorry, Berna.
to
Can we,
see.
just to clarify there? So they were living in Clondalkin, which is about
Yeah.
five minutes away from the Power City roundabout, and then her car was found that night. She was reported missing by her husband. Then later on in the day, she didn't come back after leaving about 7:20 approximately. He needed the car to get to work for 8. She didn't come back within a few minutes as expected. She went out to get a few bits because he had to take the car. She was spotted just before 8 at the Power City roundabout, which was approximately 40 minutes later, which should have been just a 4 to 5 minute journey. And then reported her missing during the day. And then her car was found about 10 o'clock at night in the Bray area and had been captured on CCTV earlier, correct?
Earlier. Yes, so the car was captured around a sort of 8:30 or 20 to 9, because it had sort of around 8:30 her car came into Bray down the Strand, and then went into the car park at the bottom where the Star Amusement is. But the car didn't actually stop the first time it entered that car park. I mean, I've even watched footage from the side of the Star Amusement. They asked me to come in and watch the footage that they had, and you can see the side of her car entering the car park, and within less than 30 seconds it actually left the car park, went back into the one-way system, and then the Gardaí cameras again picked it up around 20 to 9, coming out of Convent Avenue back onto the Strand, where the near collision happened with the Skoda Octavia. And, you know, we've begged that driver to come forward several times. All our appeals have been around, you know, you must have looked around to see who's nearly hit you coming out of that turning. And it was such erratic driving. You know, my sister was really careful driving. I can't imagine that to be her driving anyway. And then it went back into the same car park. But at the time, the Star Amusement wasn't, you know, the car park round there wasn't as big as it is now. Because now, you know, their car park goes all the way around the side of their building, whereas the side of the building before used to be derelict buildings down there. Back in 2011, and their CCTV only watched the front vicinity of their own, you know, car parking area. So we saw the side of my sister's car come into the car park, past their cameras, and that's when it didn't leave. And that was about 20 to 8 in the morning. There wasn't that many cars in that car park at that time, because I was able to watch that footage that they showed me. There was only about
20 to 9, wasn't it?
Yeah, about 20 to 9.
20 to 9,
yeah. Around 20 to 9 that was. And, you know, and at that time, there was only a dozen cars or so parked up there. And they were the normal, you know, the people who were walking their dogs or jogging, or, you know, that parked up early. And the only reason I know this is because I spent literally every morning there around that time to see who was coming and going from that area, just to see if I could, you know, talk to the locals to see if anyone saw who came out of my sister's car, because it was parked right at the end, which then was a blind spot for the cameras. And the Gardaí camera was still watching the road and not the car park. So later on, I was told by the Gardaí that it was about around 10:30 in the morning, that when that car park sort of built up with a lot of cars, and apparently there was a lot of vans and things in there, they had a call to say, you know, someone needs to watch the car park. So that's when the Gardaí camera turned to look at the car park. And that was after 10:30 in the morning. Now, yes, my sister's car was still parked there, but the image that was shown on Crime Call the first time, where they showed my sister's car sort of parked in the corner of that car park, it was a very, you know, packed out car park. So it wasn't the real picture of how her car, you know, how the car park was when she first arrived. you know. So, you know, when that was shown, a lot of people were like, oh, well, it was a full car park, and they showed us a small footage of a woman that was waiting idly, as they explained to us.
Yeah.
And they said this could be your sister. And when we watched that footage so many times, and my brother flew over from the UK to watch that footage, and looking at it, it wasn't my sister's build.
Yeah.
And we said, that's not that's not our sister, that's not Esra. And as you watch that footage, you can see that a little dog sort of comes past, and as soon as the dog passes her, this woman turns around and walks up.
Yeah.
Now, the Gardaí at the time was saying, oh, well, that woman went up and never came down. Well, anybody that knows Bray, you can walk up and not have to come down. There is another car park at the top that leads onto a road, or even if you decided to walk further, you end up in Greystones.
I know that's embarrassing. That they
shouldn't even say. I mean, that shouldn't even be. Oh, they went up and never came down.
No.
Well, I mean, I went up that hill several times and never came back down the same way.
So there's two things there. Like, I mean, you didn't even have to talk about the dog, Berna, because like if you saw your sister in the distance, like you say, you'd know her build, you'd know her gait, you'd know her body movements. You know, you didn't even have to see her face. Like you'd say, you and your brother would be able to say fairly quickly if it's her or not. And you said it wasn't. That should have been good enough. And the other thing, like I said, it's embarrassing that you've an English lady telling Irish Gardaí about the geography of Bray Hill and how to get on and off it. Like, you know.
And I said, what do you mean? You know, that woman went up and never came down. I said, I've been up that hill and I didn't come down the same day. I said, I walked all the way to the other end.
Yeah.
You know, I did that long walk to the other end, and I you know, and then got a taxi from the other end to drive myself back down to Bray. You know, it's silly to even suggest that.
That's very, very frustrating. Just the other thing to mention as well, that other car, I think, and this must be frustrating as well. I know watching it, I thought this was hard to fathom, but that car, I mean, Skoda Octavia, they believe there's also could have been, perhaps it might have been a Rapid or a Superb. They're the slightly bigger, slightly smaller ones. But either way, I thought it was strange they were never able to trace that Skoda car because
they couldn't even see the number plates though.
But even
their cameras are so
but even without that, you'd expect. I mean, considering cases have been solved in the UK when there's 25 million cars on the road, and like obviously there'll be far less numbers in Ireland, and yet even if they just put a team of people on it going through all these cars, I know it was hard to even tell the color. It could have been a light blue, light green, light pink or silver or white. But even at that, you could still narrow down a lot of those cars to the thousands. They could have worked through that, like I thought,
Of course. Yeah. And we have said, we understand Bray is a part, is a part of Ireland where tourists come down to.
Yeah.
And it was midterm week, and it could have been that someone just was passing by and has never heard of Esra's case.
Yeah.
And they may have left the country because they may have just been holidaying there. We don't know.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating because that's the only thing that we thought, that's the only person that could have looked to see who was driving that car and give us a description of the driver.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that hasn't been possible.
Yeah. And it's hard at this stage. But no, even there's still a lot of those cars on the road. Those Skodas, they're very durable. But I mean, to so long now, like even if the person was there, they mightn't remember. But it's something that could have been. It's very frustrating that it wasn't at least eliminated early on. That eliminate all the Irish cars of that make, or the three makes. From the time even to eliminate them and say, right, well, there's no Irish car here that it could be, so that's very frustrating. So you're go ahead.
I'm unfortunately, I mean, we just felt that the case wasn't taken seriously at the beginning.
I know.
Because it was just quicker to say someone's committed suicide or someone's run away. So, and I said, well, if my sister's going to run away, she's not going to make plans for her elderly mother to be visiting. And if she's going to take off anywhere, she's going to take her child with her. She's not going to go on her own. And her passports are at home. She had a UK passport and a Turkish passport, which was both at home. You know, she's only gone missing with the clothes on her back. Her purse was found in the boot of her car. And it had her driving license, her bank card, and some folded notes in it. You know, about 60 euros in notes folded and some coin. You know, that doesn't indicate, that doesn't indicate someone who's going to take off. That, you know, that purse is, I've just grabbed a little purse to run to the shops that morning, you know. But unfortunately, you know, we're just begging for someone to come forward, because I don't believe for one moment that somebody just disappears. And I know there's so many missing cases out there. And I believe with each and every one, somebody knows what's happened to that person.
Definitely.
You know?
And I mean, in this case,
people are just sitting on information.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and what you said there, there's no consolation whatsoever now to you, Berna, but this has happened with several cases that we've looked at where they've assumed that the person committed suicide, or a great one is, they went off to England or something, and like it's, you know, but no matter what happened, like even if it was a suicide or they left or whatever, each person should still be afforded the same level of rigorous investigation to try and get to the bottom of what happened to them, like, you know, and the more time that's lost early on, then you can't claw that back. Then it just makes it harder and harder, like, do you know?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
But
you know, they tried to convince me that she committed suicide from day one, and you know, they kept on and on about it. The first,
that detective,
you know, detectives that were in charge of the case. And you know, that was relayed in a documentary that I did with Channel 4 as well, and everybody commented on how badly we were treated. I mean, you know, there was a lots of things that were edited out of there, obviously, that words were said around that table, because he did treat us very
you could
unfairly.
see from the clips that were published. I mean, I'm sorry this happened to you, Berna. It's embarrassing as an Irish person to view it, and like the way he was smiling at you at one point and just trying to shove this onto you. But you know what, fair dues, you held your ground very well anyway there, and in a very dignified and stoic way, and made sure he, you know, not to give in there, like, and kept the proper message there. Because I mean, it was very poor, like, and when that happens in cases as well, where, you know, a narrative is kind of created like that, you know, you're fighting them as well as everything else to try and get the case, like, you know, which is very frustrating, like.
Of course.
Was there any other issues with the investigation that you found frustrating there, as well as those?
Well, I mean, you know, as I said, I mean, I had to come backwards and forwards with everything, you know, and I had to travel every time. I was, you know, this, even now, I mean, I've come over here, and I've lost count, to be honest with you. Maybe this is probably 40 times, if not more, that I've been over here. And but we haven't moved away from the first day, to be honest with you, because we've literally got nothing to go on, because nobody's come forward with any solid information. You know, people, we're not saying to anybody, you know, don't, any little thing that they are looking at. I mean, the people that are looking at the case at the moment, you know, they are keeping me up to date. If anyone comes forward, whatever, and they're looking into things, so they're keeping me up to date in that sense, and they're not sort of saying, oh, that's irrelevant. They will look into it before they will say that's irrelevant, which is a good thing.
Well, that's an improvement. Then you'll definitely look.
It's definitely an improvement, and then, you know, I don't want to discourage anybody with, you know, coming forward with the smallest bit of information, because it will be looked at. I mean, we had in the past that somebody said, oh, you know, I feel that she could have been in this area, and they have gone and looked in that area. But unfortunately, it's come up with nothing. But at least
it's important to eliminate it. Yeah, important to eliminate it. Like,
of course.
Just two other things then. Like, her phone was never found, but it was last pinged in that area. And do you feel that could have been? Do you think more could have been put into looking for that, or was it looking for a needle in a haystack or somewhere in between?
Well, it is a bit needle in a haystack, really. I mean, yes, the phone may have pinged in on the pole of gravestones. But as I said to them at the beginning, this is a mobile phone.
Yeah.
It's not attached to a single person.
Yeah.
You know, my mobile phone could be stolen and
Yeah.
taken from me and get used, but I don't necessarily have to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah,
So
it doesn't mean that just because her phone pinged there that she was there.
she was there, yeah. And I suppose the I think the purse, I mean, again, back to your point on suicide or running away. I mean, it's like there's more evidence to suggest the opposite of that. I mean, if the purse was left in the car, then and she wasn't with it, then that certainly suggests something else other than running away. And you know, so I mean, she could even have placed it there to say that as well. Do you know?
But the thing is, I mean, where is such a small coin purse? What concerned me is where it was found in the car.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah.
In the boot of the car. I mean, if I've got a little purse, it's either going to be in my pocket or in a little pocket down the side of the, the driver's seat, in the door, or even in the glove compartment. But I'm not going to get out the car to open my boot to put a purse in it.
Exactly.
Which makes no sense at all.
Unless she placed it there to say, that something bad was happening,
Yeah. And I said to them also, you've got to think outside the box. It could be anything. I know she was only, her car was only a small car, but that boot is big enough to hold a person.
Yeah. And
I said, God forbid, if that was a case where she was put in the boot of that car, then maybe it fell out of her pocket. Yeah. We don't know. And we always, as humans, we would always think the worst before thinking anything positive. I've had so many different scenarios go through my head, and they're not good. Put it that way, they're not good.
Yeah. I know it's awful. Anything else you want to call out there, or anything that for people to that might jog anyone's memory, or is there anything you want to call out in the case that you feel hasn't been highlighted, or that should have been highlighted more, or anything that's come up in the last year that you'd like to raise?
Well, nothing as such has come up in the last year, unfortunately. I mean, we're sort of pulling at strings to find whatever we can. That's why I come over every year and I put up posters in Bray. I mean, we went to Bray, we went to Greystones, we went all the way to Wicklow city centre also to put up posters this year, and then obviously near her home, all down her streets, Neilstown and everything. But people stop me and say, oh my God, is she still missing? That it hasn't been found. But unfortunately nobody's come to me and said, I know something, and I take this information. And that's what we're hoping that somebody will eventually do, because I do believe someone's sitting on information, and they do need to come forward. And another thing that we never understood was how her keys for that car ended up back at the chippy.
Yeah, that was the other
in
one.
Neilstown.
Yeah.
That's another thing we never understood. How the hell did that happen?
Yeah.
If a car is parked in Bray and locked up. And you see, at the beginning, from when she went missing in February all the way to June, I was backwards and forwards. I spent a long period of time here before going back to the UK.
Yeah.
And then I swapped over with my brother, who came over. And then when he came back to the UK, I flew back over. But in June, my mum was saying, please come home, because she was scared that something was going to happen to me. Obviously, she's just lost her youngest. And she was saying to me, please come home for a while. I want you home for a while. Yeah. And so I went back in June, back to London, and I didn't come back over until the first anniversary in February.
Yeah.
And when we were putting up posters in Neilstown, my daughter went into the chippy, put a new poster up, and came out of the shop. And the gentleman who ran the shop came running out with a set of keys and said to me, oh, I've got Esra's keys. And I shook, my hands were shaking like, What do you mean you've got Esra's keys? I was waiting for you to come back. And I said, well, how long have you had them? So he said, oh, it was before Christmas. And I said, but we're in February. Why didn't you take them to the Garda? Oh, well, I thought you were going to come quicker. And I thought, well, there's no guarantee that I would come back that soon. But he was holding on to them. And the whole time that I was in Ireland at the beginning from February, I was in and out of that shop because half of the shop is where they sell newspapers and cigarettes and whatever, and the other half is a chippy. So he said while they were cleaning the shop one evening, he noticed a set of keys that were left on the counter where they sold the newspapers. So he goes, I didn't take notice of it then. He goes, I just picked it up and put it on the hook. And he goes, it's only a few weeks down the line, the lady behind there said, who does these keys belong to? And when he's had a look at the photo that's on the key ring, he's realised it's my sister. And instead of taking them to the Garda, he put them in his drawer in the office, waiting for me to come, which was the wrong thing to do. Because by the time I went over, any CCTV in that shop had been wiped over. So we never knew. So we never knew who left them there. But the Garda tried to say, but your sister lost a set of keys in August 2010. And I said, yes, I'm aware that she's lost a set of keys because she told me about them. I said, but if they were the keys, I said, how did she get her car home? And I said, because if I lost a set of keys in such a small area, because there's only half a dozen shops there anyway, I would have gone in and out of every shop to say, I think I've dropped my keys. So I said, but I've seen that key on those keys when my sister visited London, and she showed me the key ring because she'd had the key ring made with the photos of her and her husband and Emin on one side and her and Emin on the other side. So she goes, oh, do you like my key ring? Look, I've had this made. And I knew the key ring. And they were the keys to the car that was driven that day. So, and they weren't the set that was lost. So we never knew how those keys got back to, Neilstown.
He just wasn't really thinking, that shopkeeper, with that.
No. That was, that could have been such a big help to us. But unfortunately, no.
What do you think might have happened to her?
Well, as I said, I always felt that something might have happened near home. And that's another reason those keys could have ended up where it was, that someone's dropped them in that shop. Because there was such that time gap from her leaving her house to actually get into that roundabout. And if whatever happened and the people, involved live in the area, I don't know. I mean, as I said, we're just pulling at strings here.
I think it was locals anyway. It was somebody local to there.
It could, somebody local to them could know what's happened. Because whoever's dropped the car in Bray may have come back to the area. That's the only thing I can think. I mean, I can't think of how else those car keys could have come back.
And it wasn't, you're sure yourself, it wasn't Esra driving. That wasn't her style of driving. It was
it wasn't her style of driving at all. And I've said 100 times, if you can prove that my sister was in that car, I will hold my hands up and say, okay, what, she went off her own free will. But I said, I can't understand or make any sense of why she would. Because I spoke to her, everything was fine. She'd made plans for Mum to come over. She'd booked a spa. She'd booked a restaurant for her to celebrate her birthday. And then suddenly she disappears. None of it made any sense. And I just can't think, they're saying, oh, maybe she was depressed. And I'm thinking, well, somebody in that state of mind, how are they making plans?
Exactly.
If that was the case.
And if she was going to take off, she wasn't going to do it on a school and work morning.
Oh, God, no.
If she wanted to slip away somewhere, she'd have gone in the middle of the night, or she would have you know,
Well, as I said,
expect.
you know, in January, she was in Dublin on her own for at least 3 or 4 days while her husband was still in London.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to take away, if you wanted to go, you would have gone then.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, not make arrangements for your mum and your mother-in-law to come, giving me a shopping list of things to send over, telling me the plans that you've made, and then suddenly you've disappeared. It just makes no sense whatsoever.
Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense.
No.
So,
it just breaks my heart that, you know, I try to get answers and I know somebody's sitting on the answer there. And, you know, they're still making us, and not just my family, but every other family who has a missing loved one out there. There's people out there with the answers, and they're just not coming forward to put our minds at rest. And it's been such a long time. Do I expect to find my sister alive? Probably not now. And that's really hard to say.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's possibly the truth.
Yeah.
You know, and all we want to do is have some closure. And if she has passed, we just want to put her to rest, you know, because I'd hate to think that she's just being kept somewhere. Because I know if my sister had any ability to get to a phone, she would phone home. She wouldn't have let her son grow up without her mum.
Yeah. Of course.
Because her son was everything to her, you know. The family was everything to her, you know, because we were such a close family.
Yeah.
You know, she wouldn't go a day without phoning somebody. If she couldn't get a hold of my mum, she'd be phoning me saying, you know, Abs, have you, and she had always called me Abs, which means sister in Turkish. And she'd say, Abs, have you heard from mum today? I haven't been able to get a hold of her. And I'd say, no, she's fine. I've already spoken to her.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't believe that she would have just gone.
It's totally out of character. And it wasn't just you, your mum, your daughters. There was a whole family there that she would have been contacting, one of them at least. Like, yeah.
Of course. You know, I mean, I've got 2 grown-up daughters. I mean, they're in their 30s now, you know, and my sister-in-law lives with my mum, my brother, and there's always somebody there that would pick up the phone, you know.
And just to call out, like, people, I mean, that's horrendous, Berna. I'm so sorry all this happened to you, and I really sincerely hope you get answers sooner rather than later, and that I think I think with as well to bear in mind, people that you can ring anonymously in as well. Now, we'll share the numbers underneath as well there for contacting the Gardaí. You've got your Facebook group there, Berna. There's the missing person support. There's several links we're going to share there now as well, and phone numbers as well. And just please, you know, if anybody knows something, to please come forward and say, because this is awful for the family here.
Yeah, we're just desperate. We're just desperate for answers. We're desperate for closure of some, you know, good or bad. We just want some form of closure now.
Yeah. So
it's been too long, you know, 14 years. I never expected to be in this position 14 years down the line. I remember when she first went missing, I thought, no, there's a mistake. There's some, you know, something's just untowards. And I actually bought a return ticket when I was coming over for the first time. When I got the call, I got a return ticket to go back home Monday. And I thought, okay, you know what? If she's having a bad day, I'm just going to take her home with me.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect to stay in Dublin for 3 months, you know. And we've done and over the years, we've done so many appeals, and we did the Channel 4. You know, last year we did the TG4 documentary also, and unfortunately none of it has brought any feedback.
Well, I've seen like you throw the kitchen sink into it, and other families as well. This same thing, to just throw everything into it, and so it's very disappointing. Nothing has come out since. So
I mean, I know I'm not on my own here, and I meet a lot of families when I go to the National Missing Persons Day in December, and we're all in the same boat. And people out there that are sitting on information, they really need to sort of dig down and think, you know what, I really need to come forward with this now and put these families out of their misery.
Exactly, because it's hard because as well, oftentimes there is a certain kind of apathy from the public as well with things, because cases aren't highlighted enough either, so it's very difficult to try, and even campaigns and so on as well, like, and other cases aren't well known at all either, and this it can be difficult, getting things out in the media and everything as well, for families to deal with this. It's just they have to kind of figure it out as they go, and then oftentimes when cases go cold or they go into a reactive phase, the families have to drag it all along with them then, like,
of course,
which is it's horrendous. Thanks very much for joining us. Is there anything else you want to mention?
No, thank you. As I said before, if you have any information, please come forward with it.
Yes, folks, and we'll leave all the numbers and links below, as I said, and bear in mind, people can ring anonymously in as well and contact anonymously as well. So please, need to find someone needs to come forward here and for Esra Uyrun and her family there, and help as much as possible, please, to try and get answers for Berna and her family.
Thank you.
So thanks for joining us, Berna. Wish you all the best. I hope this is your last time to do this, and you get some answers this year, sooner rather than later, for Esra.
Fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate that.
Okay, Brian is back with us. Brian, thank you very much for doing that interview with Berna.
Welcome, Mick. No matter.
This is a tough case. This has always come across as what was perceived as a relatively simple case initially, and particularly by the Gardaí. And yet, the more you look at it, the more complex it seems to get.
Yeah,
and I think Berna feels very much that way, doesn't she?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a pleasure to speak with Berna there. She's a very, very dignified, stoic, strong person, and a great advocate for the case there. As I said in the interview there, she it really throws the kitchen sink into it here, dedication, and find out what happened to Esra, her sister. And it is. I mean, there's an awful lot of. Apart from obviously Esra herself still being missing, there's an awful lot of other unfinished business with this case, and you've discussed it a lot within the timeline there. And I think there's a lot of things like her own car. There's the business with the phone, the purse, the Skoda car, the keys, the timeline itself in the morning, the missing 40 minutes between when she supposedly left the house and when she.
I don't mean to. But that's just what we said.
Yeah.
This case, when you look at the surface, it's a tragic, simple case. But the more you look at this missing person case, the more you see this is very complex. There's so many elements going on in it that don't make sense.
There is, so yes, and there's more than that even there as well. Like,
that we go into.
The keys, the car park in Bray, the camera there, where the phone last pinged as well, and then all put it bluntly, the shambolic treatment of Berna afterwards,
and the investigation
and the family. I mean, the initial investigation and that TV show as well. I mean, it's
Channel 401,
I mean, that was just embarrassing, to be honest with you, like, so all that stuff, so there's all that as well on top of the other things. So I guess we do. Let's
press on. And incidentally, before we begin, this is an update to our original timeline. I think this is now the third edition episode we've done on the Esra Uyrun case. There is a playlist there where you watch this. It will be linked. All the other links will be in the description, including the original timeline that we did. Again, as I said at top end of this program, we're not here to literally sit through the entire timeline and represent it to you. The link is there if you want to go to that case. A previous update we did a year ago, and now the Berna Fiden interview. And I think it's always nice for a relative to be able to come on with us, and it's something we want to do more and present the actual case to you as well, and it's not just us. This is the 2025 update. You've seen the Berna Fiden interview. Now, I said when we first did the Esra timeline, and that was way back episode 36, I think it's 2 years ago, back when Kieran was with us, that this was a complex case. In fact, I found a surprising number of comments in that original episode from our viewers and subscribers suggesting that Esra must have committed suicide and that the case was rather more simple. Is it? This straight boiling down of the case to the suicide explanation avoids far too many aspects that don't fit in. The question we first ask, and I'm happy to go there, Berna was, could Esra have committed suicide? While I still cannot exclude this possibility completely, it is far from the most likely outcome and resolution. I still believe overwhelmingly that there was third-party involvement. But first, what discounts suicide? No single piece of evidence can do that. It has to be a combination of evidences that suggest something very different. The initial Garda investigation formed an early one-track suicide hypothesis and applied it in the investigation to the detriment of other clear lines of investigation. You eliminate possibilities. That's the way it should work. You don't look to support a theory and then you, in reverse, work backwards, only looking for the things to support that theory or hypothesis as a line of inquiry. And this case wholly suffered from that for several years. Now, some points.
We saw it straight from the horse's mouth.
We saw from the lead investigator who literally, who eventually was told to take a hike off the case.
Because literally Berna was saying to him, "That's not my sister." And he was,
it is. You must be. You're mistaken. It is.
Exactly.
We're all tied up in a nice bow here. That's all sorted now. She went off the cliffs. Now, some points. Esra's body was never found to examine. The physical and electronic evidence led the case investigation. It told them the couple's Renault Twingo, small car, two-door car, hatchback, Esra's purse and mobile phone ended up there in Bray on the morning of the 23rd of February 2011, 14 years ago, and throughout that day, all of those evidences remained there. But it did not prove that Esra herself was there. We have no evidence of that. There's no CCTV or witness reports of Esra in Bray. Why would Esra choose that day of all days to commit suicide, if that was her wish? She had far easier opportunities in the week prior, when her husband was actually away working in the UK. If she was troubled and planned her own death, why would she invite that week, literally the following day, I think it was the Thursday. Why would she invite her mother and mother-in-law over for her birthday that week? And why would she go to the expense of booking hotel rooms, restaurants and health spas for all three? Because that's what you do when you're about to commit suicide or planning it. No, I don't think so. Now, some people, general conversation, have suggested that Esra could have been homesick to an extreme point of mental breakdown. But where is the evidence and signs of this in the people she knew and interacted, family and friends? No such behaviour was identified by any of her family or friends. In fact, Esra travelled home to the UK about once every 6 weeks. That's quite a lot, even if you're like in Ireland and the UK, that's very regular. That is up to, what, 6 visits, more, 6 to 8 visits per year. That's a lot. So a lot of people might only see their family once or twice a year if they're living in Ireland or the UK and are travelling back and forward. Brian, sorry, go ahead.
Just in conjunction with that as well, Mick, some people as well cite that she might have been depressed because her father passed away. But Berna and the family were very clear here. Her father was ill for many years.
Yeah.
He suffered a stroke when he was 50. And
50,
he was
yeah.
ill for many years. So his death wasn't unexpected, but they were all still devastated by it, obviously. But it wasn't it wasn't a shocking unexpected
it was a
either.
slow, long decline in his health that they all long expected to happen.
She had gone back for a visit, and it was almost like he was still alive until he saw her, and then he passed away. So it was peaceful in the end, and they got to see each other before he died.
And she was there, yeah.
Yeah, she was there. So the point is, obviously they were all devastated by that, but it was almost the natural sequence of events between generations there, you know. And
lots of family around her to support her through that period as well.
Exactly. There's no consolations, but it was a peaceful death as they could hope for there, like, you know. So that's just in conjunction with that point there, Mick, to follow.
If she was troubled and planned her own death, why would she invite her mother and mother-in-law over for her birthday that week? And why would she go to the expense of booking the hotel rooms, the health spas for all three? So, you know, we've told you what some have suggested. We've tried to answer that. So why would Esra drive all the way to Bray, place her purse in the boot of the car, walk all the way up Bray Head to the further Greystone side up the hill? How did she evade CCTV and other sightings of her? There were far more convenient and secluded places in the early morning to take your own life, and I'm referring more to the Clondalkin area. I'm thinking of areas like Rathfarnham wasn't far away. There's actually quite a lovely expansive park not far from Clondalkin. Out the N7 rural direction, not all 20 minutes you're pretty much out of nowhere. You know, the opposite end of, if you're going into the city, that if people are familiar, from the Red Cow roundabout onwards beyond Clondalkin, within 10 minutes in the car, you know, you're out in the Kildare direction, you're out in nowhere. If you really want to do something in seclusion, they're the better places. Why would you go all the way out to Bray at rush hour at that hour of the morning where it's busy? And why take her phone? You know, I know this is 14 years ago, 2011, but we all went dumb to our phones. We all read previous cases of suicide, of murder, criminal cases. We knew that your phone was a high-end device that would be examined in tragic or criminal circumstances. Why would you take that device with you? It is essentially a tracking device. Whoever drove the Renault Twingo to Bray was clearly unfamiliar with the best way to get there. Motorway exits, congestion, erratic driving, etc. Let me just explain a little bit of that. When you come off the motorway, as you'll find with a lot of sort of towns and cities, when you come off a motorway in Ireland and many cities, you know, we've all had that experience in a car where you're driving, for whatever reason you get distracted, you miss your turn off, oh, damn it. But you know, at the other end of that town, there's going to be another turn off, and maybe even another turn off further on, which you might have to travel a bit further back to get into. But to get on to Convent Avenue, where Esra, if she was driving that car, or somebody else, they would have had to have exited at the furthest end of the motorway to use that route, and that doesn't make sense to anybody familiar with that area. It just doesn't chime. So how did Esra's car keys, if she committed suicide in Bray, She brought the phone with her. She brought the car with her. She brought a purse with her, which contained a small amount of money, I think 50, 60 euro, her ID. You know, it does. How did the car keys months later end back in a chip shop in Clondalkin? So if something untoward happened when she got to Bray, let's surmise, how did that person know that she came from Clondalkin and just conveniently did something untoward to her, but just says, but you know, I'll do a good deed, I'll drop her keys back to Clondalkin, because you know, that's what you do. It doesn't make any sense. And aspects that might support a case of suicide. No witnesses were ever discovered that identified any abduction or crime taking place in Clondalkin or anywhere between there, Clondalkin and Bray. Ezra was familiar with the Bray Head area and visited there. There's no dispute there. In fact, one of the pictures we showed in the original timeline actually shows her across on, I think it's Bay Head area up on the hill. So she was familiar with the area. Why would she make such a convoluted journey to come off the motorway and come in where she came in? Doesn't make sense. That doesn't sound like Ezra is driving that car. It sounds like more somebody who may be less familiar with entering that area. Or did that car come from somewhere else? Did that car go further down the motorway and come back much further, and that's why it entered its first entry point, because it was coming from the other direction? Ezra had taken the death of her father a little bit harder, as Brian explained, than other family members, and the death was still relatively recent, October 2010, though it had not been unexpected, as we explained, after her father's many years of very poor health. And the family dealt with it very well. They were there to support each other, so it just seems odd that that would be actually a factor if you really want to zone in on suicide. Ezra had experienced many life changes in relative few short years, moving country, away from family, job circumstances, housing, living circumstances, bereavement, the father, new friends, creating new social circles, new motherhood, 2.5-year-old child at the time, and all the responsibilities that go with that. But does that really add up? And where are the signs that all that had an impact? We can't find any. Throughout this case, across 14 years, we've primarily relied on Ezra's family, represented by her sister Berna, who you heard interviewed, to build a picture of Ezra's life and circumstances. That's it. In essence, that's the only picture that we actually have. So I'm left wondering, by February 2011, how strong was the desire and decision to move back with Ozgur, her husband, and Erman, the young child, to family in London. It seemed very strong. How much was this playing on her mind, and only reinforced by her arranging both her mothers to visit her in Dublin? So you see, the point we're making is, this doesn't make sense. It simply doesn't make sense. Why go to all those plans, and knowing that her and her husband had already started the initial process of, let's maybe move back to the UK. Okay, we've done our time now in Ireland. Let's get back. You're constantly over every 6 to 8 weeks to the UK. I understand. That's where you want to be. It's fine. We'll start to make preparations. And they were already. So why would that be a factor on her mind to end up committing suicide? I will say this. There is planning in this case. Oh, by God, there is. But all of it is completely adverse to a planned suicide. If this was a suicide, then it seems more plausible that it was unplanned, a spur of the moment mental crisis or trigger. Brian, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, in relation to point one there as well, mate, like, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Yeah, we've said it so many times,
Because, they're not, if somebody's going to commit an abduction, even if it is at 7:20 in the morning in a February morning or whatever, they're going to be just as discreet as possible about it. They're not going to be in the middle of traffic going, hang on a minute, lads.
I'm just going to induct somebody if you could just stand aside there.
Yeah, it'll be something discreet. So again, like I said,
it's not. I think they say that afternoons and obviously particularly evenings are the most common time, late, and particularly where light is a factor. Lack of light therein.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't have been overly bright. I suppose it could have been getting bright at that time. All right, no.
Yeah, I don't want to seem flippant, but again, this goes back to so many of the points we make.
Yeah,
your average kidnapper, abductor, stalker doesn't get out of bed too early in the morning because he's too busy with other stuff, either concealing his secret life. They don't tend to get out of bed to do stuff until later in the day.
They work at night as well.
Yeah, they work at night.
Yeah.
They operate in a climate of secrecy and concealment, and when everybody else is not paying attention. Everybody is paying attention at 7 or 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. People are up, active, and doing stuff, and they're wide awake. They're paying particular attention. This ain't no time to be. I'm not saying it's exclusively not the time it happens.
Yeah.
We have had occasions of that, but generally this is very low instances of so-called kidnap or abduction happening at this time, notwithstanding the circumstances of this case.
Yeah. And the funny thing, like, again, the other point in conjunction with that, it goes against this a bit now, but you have the 40 missing minutes there in the morning. So that's when something. I mean, we don't know because we've no evidence, but it strongly suggests that if the journey that would normally take 5 minutes takes
something
40
has
minutes,
happened.
That's what something
Yeah.
happened to
If
then the car appears an hour later. Then
if Ezra is in a car, a Renault Twingo, that leaves Clondalkin and heads up towards the Perth City roundabout, which is roughly, no matter how many times you do this journey, and we've tested it, you can do it as many. I've worked in that area, I've driven through it, and I can guarantee you that journey, unless it's absolutely chock-a-block, bumper to bumper, there's a major accident, which there wasn't that morning. It was actually a quiet morning because the kids were off school. There is absolutely no way that a 4-minute journey, a 4.5-minute journey, turns into 40 minutes. And that's when that car appeared. So where was that car prior to it? Did it actually leave at 7:15, 7:20? And if somehow she popped into the local Neilstown stores and spent that long there to finally go back on the motorway going in the opposite direction to home, how come we have no CCTV footage of Ezra at the Neilstown store? How come we have no eyewitnesses? She was never there.
No.
Okay. Now, let's deal with another question. And we have to ask it. We didn't want to go too deeply into this with Berna. Are there reasons to raise suspicion of husband Ozgur Uyrun? If Ozgur is directly involved in the harm or disappearance of his wife Esra, then we would have to accept that he has entirely fabricated the circumstances of that morning. We know Esra is alive the previous evening because she's active using her phone, socialising and having a conversation with a neighbour. It is only Ozgur's account of that morning until 7:15 a.m. we have to rely on as regards Ezra's behaviour, mood and movements. In reality, we only have proof of life evidence outside of Ozgur's up until around 8 or 9 p.m. The previous evening. The account of an older female neighbour who claims to have witnessed Ezra get into her car that morning at 7 a.m. or sometime, she believes sometime not too long after 7 a.m, which might chime in with the 7:15, has never been confirmed, and this observation was seen through a window from a distance and before sunrise that morning. We have checked it. Sunrise wasn't until, we believe, I think it was around the 7:30 mark, and we all know sunrise is sunrise, but you're still gaining it. Even after that, you're still gaining a little bit of light after that. So you can imagine prior to 7:30 what it was like. I mean, it was effectively semi-dark between 7 and 7:30. So we've never had that eyewitness statement of a neighbour corroborated, who would have been essentially looking out a curtain in a lit room that morning in semi-darkness, looking across the road and thinking she sees what she sees. It's never been corroborated. But how does Ozgur carry out any nefarious deed without a car? Remember, he hasn't got the car, if we are to believe what has happened, and Esra has gone off to do something tragic in Bray. All the while parenting a 2.5-year-old son and getting ready for work. His window of opportunity was minute that morning, 7:20 to 8:40 a.m, to be at Bray Head. It's not impossible, but it's minute, the window. And remember all of the circumstances. If something nefarious happens, that has to go on. The entire scenario seems too elaborate, and one that would have raised immediate suspicions, the Gardaí investigators, and far too many unaccounted for loose ends. However, a greater window of opportunity did exist the previous evening and the early hours of the morning. There's nothing in the early investigation to indicate that Ozgur Uyrun was ever considered a suspect in the disappearance of his wife. As normal, his digital activity and all communications would have been secured and examined before being eliminated as a potential suspect. Now we'll talk more about that case and really what was going on. What might help in this case is if we knew more about the activity and movements of Ozgur that morning. I am certain on Garda Síochána have the information. Whether he called his manager, employer at Sporting Bet and explained that he could not attend work that day, what, if any, communications he attempted throughout that day to phone, text Esra's mobile. We know he was in communication with Berna and other family members that day as well. If he contacted anyone else on his family side, anyone to babysit his son, and left the home in search of Esra, believing her to be somewhere locally. But where would he have gone? He doesn't have access to a car. The car is now in Bray. I always think it better for a spouse in circumstances like this to be public and clear about their activities and behaviour in the time of a family's disappearance, and in the event spotlight and suspicion might come upon them, as has been the case. Ozgur, with respect to him, chose not really to do much of that. It's clear from the outset and intervening years that Esra's family in London on the day of her disappearance were as frustrated with his delay as he was with the Gardaí's response to his concerns throughout that day. And we know he was in communication with the Gardaí throughout that day, but initially he indicates he didn't appear to be taken seriously. I have one overriding red flag in regards to Ozgur, and it's nothing to do with his wish many months later to return with his son Erman to family in the UK. I understand that. It's the exchange mentioned between him and Gardaí about where his wife Esra might have possibly gone on the morning of her disappearance. That would have been a natural question Gardaí would have asked. Well, where might she have gone? What would be her routine? I would like to know when exactly he suggested, and we do know he did suggest this, but when, we're not sure. And it was that Esra could have went to Bray and the family were familiar with the area on days out. In essence, did he offer this possibility, Bray, before or after Esra's Renault Twingo was found in the Brayhead car park at 11 p.m. that evening on the day of her disappearance, among all of his exchanges with Gardaí? Or was it in reaction to news of the car find? Oh my God, Bray. Oh, that's a place that she has gone before. Okay, fair enough. Knowing that piece of the timeline could be critical, but we don't know when. Brian?
Yeah, it's tricky there already.
Yeah.
There's information to be clarified there, and then the neighbour as well. Like there was, did any other neighbours see anything or anything? It seems like that information wasn't clarified there.
Yeah, and there's an awful lot of aspects that weren't clarified. So was Esra Uyrun abducted by someone known or unknown to her? We can proffer another possibility. So there's a number of strands to this possibility. Her intention was to simply pick up some items from the shop at around 7:20 a.m, but she came upon someone with nefarious intentions unknown to her and was abducted. Why do we not have any witnesses or direct evidence of this in Clondalkin? It's very hard to understand that possibility. If she was flagged down, you would tend to think she would have to be flagged down. I mean, I know that intersperse of roadway to the Power City roundabout and before it. So I'm thinking if something happened like that, she'd have to be flagged down with somebody she knew or recognised, maybe in the estates, coming out of the estates, where she had time to pull in or stop or say, "You okay? Is everything all right?" You know. But remember, in the back of her mind, she's in a rush. She has to get the car back to Ozgur because he's got to be in work at 8 o'clock. So are you really going to as much as we like to be, it's, as we say, it's nice to be nice. At that hour of the morning and somebody's waving to you the side of the road, "Oh, I have a puncture," you wait, sorry, I can't help you, I'm busy, I've got,
Commitments,
so of commitments. It doesn't make sense. Was Ezra's short trip to the local shop some kind of ruse to conceal a planned meeting or intention she had that morning, arranged that evening, she was hiding from her husband? We don't know. And that meeting somehow she knew, and it turned into something nefarious. So that's another view of what might have happened. Was Ezra set up? Was she being stalked? And she met a tragic end due to some obsession or grievance by someone else. Now, the last seems the least likely without any history of evidence. In fact, a lot of what we've presented there as other scenarios don't really make any kind of sense.
Yeah,
Brian?
So again, it's something definitely happened locally in the area anyway. That's and just again, might have been the CCTV of it. That doesn't mean it didn't happen either. And I think we just don't know. Berna doesn't either. She did say that was her belief.
Yeah, she was clear on that. Yeah,
clear on that there. What she that was something local, and that sounds most plausible there anyway. I think.
Yeah, I know. And she never got to Bray at all. The whole.
She didn't know. She didn't get to the shop. She didn't get to.
Yeah, she didn't get to the shop, the local shop. She didn't get to Bray.
And we're back to this again. The 40 minutes, at that time, 7:20 to 8 or 8:05, whichever it was, that 8 o'clock. That 40 minutes. That's the key to it. Whatever happened there is, I think, is the key to it anyway. And it's the obvious thing to say, but I think so.
So, without knowing the answers to the two following questions, or the following points, it's hard to know and decide on the most probable outcome of this case. In regards to suicide, I mean, if you honestly believe that Ezra left that home at 7:15 to 7:20 with the intention of committing suicide, is in some burst of idea that came into her mind that was it, okay, go with it. But why the 40-minute delay? Okay, so it takes her 40 minutes to get to the Power City roundabout. So what did she do? What, she just parked up at the side of the road to have a think about all this, to amuse on it? The more people think about that tragic intention, the less likely they actually are to carry it through. Would somebody not have noticed a young woman just sitting vacantly thinking in her car, pulled over the side of the road? Yeah, again, we need to think. It doesn't make sense. So who was driving the Renault Twingo between Clondalkin out to Bray Strand at 8:20 to 8:40 a.m. on the morning of February 23rd, 2010? Am I right in that? 2010, 2014? That should be 2011, shouldn't it?
2011,
yeah. Equally important, where was the car the previous day? We've talked an awful lot about the Skoda, the incident with the swerving to avoid, the Skoda had to swerve to avoid the Renault Twingo as it entered from Covent Avenue onto the Strand Road. Equally important, where was the car the previous day? So that's what I would like to know. We've heard an awful lot of where the Renault Twingo was on the 23rd of February. I want to know more about where that car was the previous evening. Did Esra go out? Did she meet anybody? You know, if we're considering some of the scenarios above, did Ozgur go out in the car? What time it got parked up and wasn't used again? And if it was, if we could pick up that car on registration, plate recognition the following day, why can't we pick it up the previous day and its movements? Why hasn't the Gardaí ever disclosed that? Does it support the situation that everything is au fait with the husband and nothing untoward happened there and this is how it played out? Or are they withholding information that maybe suggests there are question marks there? I don't know. So if Esra's phone pinged last in Bray late in the evening of February 23rd, what other mobile phone tower pings did it make throughout the day and that day before? It didn't just ping in Clondalkin and suddenly not ping again until 10, 11 o'clock that night. Sorry Gardaí, we don't buy that. Where is the communications log? Where is the data log for all that day?
Yeah.
Where that we know where the car was, we don't know where the phone was exactly.
And just back to your previous point as well, Mick, I think the reason they weren't talking about the previous days is because they had their theory and they just they were fitting the
walking backwards. I'm walking backwards.
Yeah.
I'm walking back.
Exactly.
Suicide's that way. That's where I'm walking. I'm looking that way, but I'm walking this way.
I know.
Hello, investigator.
There was I heard a good quote the other day there, and it said that I'm sure you probably heard before, but they said that the most important times are when the person goes missing is
those 48, 72 hours. Yeah.
And the 40 hours before and the 48 hours after. And I think that's debatable, obviously, but I think that's very I think that's correct, like, because you have to look at both sides of it, and there isn't that. Maybe there is stuff they've looked at and we don't know about it, but it wasn't included in the official communications to say this is what you were doing the previous day, this is where the car was, blah blah blah. That there was nothing there, you know.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to a point I made earlier regarding. I said it after the time myself and Kieran did the original timeline 2 years ago, and we had an awful lot of comments saying, look, Mick, it's a simple case, you know. Unfortunately, it's tragic, you know. It's obviously she went to Bray, drove out the car, you know, and commit suicide. Okay, so here's a big torpedo for your little boat that you float on the suicide. Who left the keys on the counter of McCarthy's chipper many months after Esra's disappearance? She had to have the keys, you know, because she drove the car to Bray. So if you accept that she was in the car, drove to Bray, off the cliff end, good luck, sees everybody. How did her keys 9 months later, I think it was November, December, they were handed in, or we assumed they were handed in, but they turned up in a chip shop? That's a torpedo for your little suicide theory. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. Now you might suggest, oh well, maybe somebody found the keys tossed away in Brayhead. Yeah, so they picked them up and they just happened to conveniently bring them all the way back to Clondalkin. And it's what you do with a set of keys that you believe might be from somebody missing. You know, it's the first place you go, isn't it? Where there's a crime committed or something untoward, there's appeals. I'll go to the chipper. That's, you know, Garda headquarters, the chipper. That's where I'll bring the keys. Sorry, doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
it's nonsense. It's bollocks. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and there was another piece of frustration with this as well, and Berna mentioned it in the interview, that those keys weren't returned for a long time after they were handed in. Yeah. And if there was a bit of confusion, someone put them on the hook in the shop and etc.
Yeah, they were forgotten about for a while, and then the owner said, "Hang on a second, what's going on with these keys?"
Yeah. So if it mightn't have led to anything, but if they'd been handed up sooner, then they might have been able.
There might have been a train of inquiry
or whatever, like
and the CCTV.
It
it was gone by then.
So that was very frustrating. I could, you know, geez, it really felt for Berna there when she was talking about that. It was just
that sense of that's how that's how close we could have got to finding out what really happened, and yet it was left so long.
Yeah.
So what additional CCTV footage have the investigation team gathered that has not been made public, and what degree of forensic analysis has been carried out on it? And this is something Berna is been pushing in recent interviews and media attention on this case in the past week or two. Her understanding is it does exist, and her question is what analysis has actually been carried out on that, if any deeper, more modern analysis. If this is the case of an abduction and or nefarious intentions, and Esra met a tragic end, I'm inclined to believe both the car, the purse, the phone were all planned decoys by someone responsible. That Renault Twingo didn't randomly turn up in Bray. It was specifically chosen, and whoever brought it there was determined they were parking it in the car park. Remember from our timeline, Covent Avenue down onto the Strand, it goes around, it pauses after the incident with the Skoda. There's a pause further down. I think it then enters the car park, turns around and exits the car park and does a full circumnavigation again, and then finally re-enters the car park. There's only about a dozen cars in there. It's not busy. There's plenty of spaces, but it parks further down. That, whatever happened in this case, that was intentional. That wasn't just random. That car and whoever was driving it wanted to put that car there, and for whatever reason, and I'm surmising, perhaps on the first occasion, after it got onto Strand Road for the first time, maybe whoever was driving it, whether it was Esra, wasn't familiar with the traffic, a bit flustered, I don't know, but entered. Someone was in the car park, getting in, out of the car, and the person in the Twingo didn't want to be seen and thought, wrong time, get the hell out of here, come back, do a circumnavigation, come back when it's quieter. Maybe that's one scenario as to explains why that car. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I think just to call out as well, the purse might be slightly different because that ended up in the
purse,
boot.
yeah.
So I think there's a couple of things to note there. I think if they were going to plant the purse, like we discussed in the interview, you'd expect they should have it in the main body of the car. So I don't know, that could be a case of that the purse, that she might have placed the purse there to say, hang on, if
something untoward. How will this purse get in the back? In other words, I ain't in the front of the car. I ain't running the roadshow here. I'm in the back of the car. I'm in the back seat, or I'm in the boot.
Yeah, she could have placed that there, and because you'd expect, if they did want to give the impression that she parked the car up herself, you'd expect to have been in the gap between the seats or the door of the car,
and why,
or in the glove compartment or something.
But again, suicide and all that, why leave it in the car? Okay, fair enough, but why in the boot? It doesn't make any sense. Now we did point, myself and Kieran did point out, we showed extensive pictures of the back of that Twingo, and we did show there's quite a gap of about an inch or two between the rear seats. It's a small car. There is no proper separator. So if Esra, for whatever reasons, whatever circumstances, was in the rear of the car, and remember, it's not a car you can get out of if somebody's in the front seat driving the car and it's moving, because it's a two-door car, and you're in the back seat, is it possible there was some incident, some ruckus in the back of the car, and her purse fell out and fell through the separator between the two seats into the boot? That's one scenario. Was she in the boot? Another scenario. Or was she driving?
Or she could have pushed it out through herself if she was in the back.
Deliberately pushed it through herself. Or, of course, the other final circumstance, Esra, and that circumstance that Brian talked about, that happened much earlier that morning, and whoever was driving that car didn't realise the purse had went through, didn't check it when they left. Oops, bit of a mistake there. So for me, I think, there are really only two scenarios. we can solidly deal with. Well, 3 if you want to go into down the abduction mode, but I'm not really buying that at that hour of the morning. Esra, for whatever reasons, unplanned or not, on the morning of February 23rd, drove from Clondalkin to Bray and tragically ended her life soon after arriving, as was the early Garda working theory. Despite all the other case contradictions, she would not be the first or last to disappear off Bray Head without a body being discovered. Or Esra Uyrun was never in Bray that day. The keys left in the chipper months after, the car journey out there, the phone dumped and lost in Bray were all decoys to present the inference and evidence that Esra went there to take her own life, and that Esra met her end sometime and soon after she left her home in Clondalkin, and that a perpetrator abductor has somehow managed to elude discovery. Brian, final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think agreed, Berna. I don't think the suicide option adds up. This is a complex, very complicated. I don't think it doesn't add up. There's all the evidence there. I think there was something bad happened to her.
Something untoward has happened here
in Clondalkin, and I think something bad happened in Clondalkin. I think that's what happened, and the rest of it was a setup, unfortunately. Appreciate Berna's candor in answering that, what she believed herself there as well,
Yeah, because that's not easy for a relative close to Esra to admit.
So fair dues to Berna. We appreciate her her candor there in answering that question.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna call it a night. Thanks, Brian. Most importantly, for you did all the work on this episode in conducting the interview, and we're very gracious and thankful for Berna Fiden, for making herself available. Incidentally, that interview was done last week because Berna regularly comes over here. She comes over here, I think, at least once every 2 months. To keep the campaign going, and she was over obviously particularly for the 14th anniversary, and she was very gracious to make herself available when she came over to us. This had been something that was in planning, again, like I say, for several episodes, other episodes. It's so look, that's it for episode 65 of Radio Spoil. Please, links if you have information. You saw them during when Brian was doing the interview with Berna. You saw all the phone numbers at the bottom. We deliberately, I know you might seem it's a bit annoying or distracting, but we deliberately kept them on screen throughout that whole interview, because we know someone is sitting out there and probably knowingly or unknowingly has information, and hopefully that person might just step forward and go, the numbers are there, I'm gonna take this forward. We all know the thing with we always say, times change, allegiances, associations, interest in the case, things, circumstances can shift, and something in the back of your mind has been bugging you that you wanted to come forward with, and now you're ready. The numbers are there. God bless everybody. Take care. Hopefully we'll be back soon the next week to 2 weeks with our next timeline. Okay? Take care.
All the best, folks. Bye now.